Hello and welcome to the pre-show for DatechGuy off the radio. Haven't had a lot of time to prep today because of a couple of personal things that had to get done. In fact, I've actually got the laptop on the laptop at the moment because I'm trying to get a couple of last-minute things taken care of. Haven't even had a chance to tweet out that I'm here, so that's why probably not a lot of you are already here. Couple of things to bring up. First of all, if you're in the Fitchburg-Leominster area, near where I live, there's going to be a special mass to pray for the country tomorrow at noontime at St. Bernard's Church. You're more than welcome to show up. I should mention that we're going to be having the podcast should be at 3 o'clock fairly regularly right now, at least until Thanksgiving, when our busy season begins. So you should expect to see me at 3. I don't expect a whole lot more overtime. The Trump economy is good, but overtime in our slow season just isn't going to happen every single week. For those of you, and I will be mentioning this again on the show, but I am going to be appearing on Lee Stranaham's show, The Backstory, at 5:15 today. I literally got the call just before I got ready to start the show, which threw me off a little bit. And I also had some personal stuff I had to take care of, which threw us off a little bit, which is why I'm running a little late. Haven't even had a chance to retweet that the podcast is going on. So that's going on. That's big. I'm just about finished with the final section of the new book. The wife's got to look it up because it's a book we're doing together on marriage. So I'm hoping to have that published early next year. So that'll be something for you to take a look at there. Finally got an Installance after a while. It's been a real dry season. So and again, we're doing silly catch-up stuff because this is the pre-show. For those of you who don't know, we do a pre-show from about 5 minutes of till 3 o'clock. When we get into the actual show, we just do a little socializing. And if you've been here before and you notice the background's different, that's because there's a new couch, which is very flexible apparently because I stood up and it just started sliding. So, but that's what's going on. Not a lot of excitement. Just waiting for election day and waiting for things to happen. Again, this is Massachusetts, so there's a lot of Biden signs. There's a lot of people who are going to. I mean, Joe Biden. If they believed everything on the laptop, they're going to vote for him anyways around here, which doesn't say much for the people around here. So I'm going to put out one more tweet that we're live and see if we can get a few more eyeballs, and then we will begin. So I'm going to put down the mic. I really should get a stand-up mic. Maybe I'll do that for Christmas or something. I don't know if I'm talking loud enough, but okay, let's tweet this out. Tech Guy off the radio live now. Topics. Joe Biden, the debate, Goremageddon, plus 4 years. Actually, we're going to call that Goremageddon, the second generation. Words and meanings. Watch live now here. And again, this is a no-frills podcast, so naturally, there's no frills. I'm just getting the stuff up so we can get going. It's all a question of just getting the stuff done. Watch now here. And let's put some names. Let's get Stacy. Let's get Bill Hoge tweeting that out. Let's get Ed Morrissey and Ed Driscoll tweeting that out. And of course, we can't do this without Baldy Locks. And of course, Boston Bridget, who is a regular watcher over here. Let's see who else we want to add on here. And let's see if we can get a few more bodies. It's 2 characters too many. So we'll just take a watch live here. That will tweet that out. And it's 3:01, so we are now officially on the air. This is the Tech Guy Off the Radio podcast. I am your host, Pete the Tech Guy. Half Fedora, Dr. Uskoff, and all that stuff will travel. And I'm delighted to be here at our normal 3 p.m. time for the Tech Guy Off the Radio podcast. As I said in the pre-show, we will be at this time at least through until Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, all bets are off because I'll probably be working a lot of Fridays. And we are, again, very happy to talk. Lots to talk about today. And I want to start with last night's debate, which I am calling the Joe Biden Kick Me debate. And last night's debate was a great example of the difference between conventional wisdom and reality. And one of the things that you have to realize, and it's something I've said over and over again concerning it, conventional wisdom is always absolutely 100% correct right up until the moment it isn't. Everyone, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Well, things did not happen the way they expected. And now, this is a terrible thing to say, but I'm going to lead with this. The first thing I noticed when I watched the debate, now remember, I didn't watch the debate when it happened. I work until midnight, and thanks to the Trump economy, we had work till on a third. This is the slow season for where I work. And normally we would be let home early on a Thursday because there just wouldn't be work. But there was work all the way through midnight. Again, the Trump economy strikes again. But I got home at midnight. I made myself some beautiful peppers, onions, and a steak that needed to be cooked, frankly. It had been sitting for a couple of days. And then I sat down, put on the debate. First thing I noticed was that whoever did the makeup for the young lady who was doing the debate did a terrible job. She's a much nicer looking young lady than the makeup made her. And that's just bad job by the makeup department. But that's just life. But everyone was talking about, oh, how is Trump going to handle having his mic cut off? How is he going to handle dealing with not being able to interrupt? How is he going to handle all these things? And of course, the president came out as calm, as measured, and just pounded Joe Biden into the sand without being impolite about it. And I think part of this confusion, part of this ridiculous set of expectations concerning the president is that a lot of people's image of the president is a caricature of his actual image. And part of that is by design. The president, and people forget who Donald Trump is. I don't forget it. But a lot of people in media forget it because their only real knowledge of Donald Trump is in media. All they know about him is The Apprentice. Now, President Trump was in his 60s when The Apprentice was made, which means he had had a lifetime of experience, a lifetime of work, and a lifetime of dealing with things. And one of the things he had a lifetime of dealing with is people and situations. And I look at this and I'm saying to myself, seriously, you don't understand that Donald Trump knows how to deal with people? You don't know and understand that Donald Trump has had to deal with people who he doesn't necessarily agree with so many times? And I just found it amazing because remember, Donald Trump is a businessman. And as a person who's a hotel type person, has been everywhere around the world and had to deal with all types of people who have all types of different opinions and all types of different ways of doing things. Okay, I'm going to tweet something out if you don't mind. Talking the debate. Debate live. Now, listen at the link. So, again, Donald Trump is used to doing business deals around the world with people who have different ideas, different ways of thinking, different ways of handling things. And he's been managing to make deals and make things happen forever. All his life. That is part of what he does. This is how he makes his living. And if you have a person who makes their living dealing with people, if you have a person who makes his living making sure that he can massage certain folks, making sure that he doesn't offend folks that he has to do business with, what makes you think he's not going to be able to deal with a different debate situation? Well, if all you know about Donald Trump is from The Apprentice, then maybe you think like that. But if you know Donald Trump from other locations, if you think about what he's done in his career, dealing with contractors, dealing with politicians, dealing with mayors, knowing what to say, what not to say, knowing when to say it. Because remember, if you do the wrong thing with any of these people, you're toast. You're not going to be able to build that hotel. You're not going to get your permits. You're not going to get what you need to do business. And that's what it's really all about, being able to do business with other people. And Trump knows how to do these things. Trump has always known how to do these things. And that people thought he was just going to rush in like a bull in a china shop, they're fools. Now, in fairness, at the last debate, which I still think Trump won, people have hit him for his performance, but Rush Limbaugh talked about how he was coming off of COVID and how that might have made a difference in the terms of how he did things. And you could say that. I mean, that's certainly possible. It's not, I don't subscribe to it as the main reason, but it's certainly possible. But I got to tell you, he was crisp and he let Biden talk. He let Biden dig his own grave. And what's amazing about this is, remember, Joe Biden pretty much went into hiding for 3 days to get himself ready for this. And Biden could have done just as well if he just put a kick me sign on his back and be done with it. It was just, he made so many mistakes. And I'm not talking about mistakes of fact. I mean, this is at debates like this, I expect people like this to make misstatements of facts. But the one thing you don't want to do is to make statements that, first of all, hurt your ability to sell yourself as a viable politician, but you don't want to set yourself up for failure. The worst thing you can do is set yourself up for failure. And Biden did that. And Biden didn't just do that. He did that a lot. The first big mistake he made, well, actually, I shouldn't say the first, but I think the biggest mistake he made was saying, denying what he said about fracking and saying, go ahead, put it on your website. You do not invite somebody to fact check you in real time when they can literally put up a post with those facts. I mean, you just don't do that. It was so foolish to invite Trump. Oh, go ahead, put it up. I mean, I cannot adequately state how foolish that was. And that he did that and thought, oh, no big deal. I'm going to do this. I mean, that's just stupid. That's just plain, unadulterated stupidity. Because the Trump campaign had it up at once. They had it up at once. And of course they had it up at once. Remember, Donald Trump had literally just done a montage of Joe Biden talking about how he was going to stop fracking, of Biden and Camilla, the Invisible Woman Harris. We should start calling her Camilla, the Invisible Woman Harris, because you never see her. She's never around. Where do you see her after the debate? I mean, Joe Biden, he's old, he's sick, he's got dementia. He might have an excuse for trying to hide. But Camilla Harris doesn't. So, I mean, you hear nothing or see nothing about her because what is there for her to see or hear? What is there for her to say? I mean, it's funny. It's hilarious. But when you hear this stuff from Joe Biden, when you hear this stuff, it just makes you laugh. It makes you laugh a lot. Because, again, it's a gimme for the president, kick me. And, of course, he's over there. I never took any foreign money from... I mean, it's not like this stuff hasn't been reported. Remember, back in the days when nobody expected Biden to run, the media was willing to talk about this. Now, not so much. And for a second, I thought there was someone at the door. And one of the reasons why the media is not so willing to talk about it right now. Oh, it is someone at the door. I think it's my son. But one of the reasons why people aren't willing to talk. I'm right. It is my son. Hello, my son. How are you? We're doing a live podcast now. You'll have to forgive me. But one of the reasons why the media is so reluctant to talk about it is because nobody wants to be the guy blamed for Joe Biden losing, because they're going to blame somebody. And I bring this up because you might recall 3 years ago when Hillary Clinton started to falter, you had CNN dismissing it. And all of a sudden Tapper took over and reported on it and treated it seriously. And this is before Tapper went completely over the line. And then when he came off, because he was doing a live report, then it was again spin. And it was very funny. And I have argued that the reason why that was able to get into the consciousness was Tapper brought it up, and CNN could literally see the pivot from, oh, this is phony to, oh, this is real. And the second mistake was Biden bringing up the laptop stuff himself. I was wondering how Trump, that's a friend of mine, his name, how Trump was going to bring it up. And he didn't have to. Biden brought it up first. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to be kidding me. You can't. I mean, maybe he wanted it brought up at his own terms. Maybe his people decided the best way to deal with it is mention it first and discount it first. And then Trump is countering him rather than bringing it up himself. But it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous that he let that opening. That was another kick me moment. And that Biden, and remember, this is a guy who spent 3 days doing nothing but preparing for this. And we can talk about how you don't want a president, a leader who's actually spends his time hiding in a basement for 3 days. I mean, what's he going to do every time he has to deal with a foreign leader? Go into a basement for 3 days? I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I got to tell you that he would make that kind of mistake was a killer. Now, the third big mistake was talking about, all the green jobs that were being created. Just for the record, by the way, I work in a warehouse that used to be a green jobs place where they built solar panels that our governor opened with great fanfare at the time, that everyone's, this is the wave of the future. And they went under bust really fast once the subsidies stopped. And so now it's a warehouse where I happen to work. And it's all a boondog. We're going to get it. The money, we're going to funnel money to our investors, to our friends who will kick back money in terms of political contributions, which we can pay our staff. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and let me quote something that Sean Davis tweeted out here, because Melissa McKenzie just retweeted it, and it's worth mentioning, because Biden's saying, I never took any money. Biden falsely claims nobody said Hunter did anything wrong in Ukraine. In reality, a top State Department diplomat told the White House, Biden's White House, that Hunter's Burisma dealings were a huge problem. Biden's office repeatedly ignored the concerns. And of course they did, because he's getting the kickbacks. And that, we keep hearing people saying that this is nothing but, you can't say something like that and be credible. Remember, Joe Biden's been, after being a lifeguard, Joe Biden's only job has been in government for 47 years, and he's rich. People understand this. People aren't stupid. Now, some people might not care. There are a lot of Democrats who don't care. And it's just ridiculous. And again, Biden's 10 years to save the planet, and we're going to pivot to that in a moment. But then the oil thing. Yeah, we're going to transition away from oil. Trump talked about being energy independent. Energy independent is good. And one of the reasons why you can get the peace deals is because the Arab world doesn't have us in their pocket because we need their oil. And there's one thing that I want to criticize the president for in the debate. And it's a criticism I would make of him of every single debate. You can tell that how exciting my podcast is because my wife is snoring. She just fell asleep. Oh, geez. Okay, my laughing just woke me up, and she's giving me the family salute. we won't demonstrate the family salute on the air, but I was teasing me. I wasn't teasing you. I was saying I put you to sleep, but it's just hilarious when he needs states like Pennsylvania. I mean, Biden needs Pennsylvania. Trump could win without Pennsylvania. Biden can't. Biden has no path out without Pennsylvania. And when you're saying this about oil, when you're saying we're going to transition off of this, and remember, we have seen a summer with California not able to keep the lights on. California not able to keep the lights on. But again, I don't understand why Trump didn't mention peace in the Middle East, which, again, made possible by the other stuff. But Joe Biden basically walked around that debate with a kick me sign. And whenever things did not go his way, it's like he didn't know what to say. It's, come on, man, come on. I mean, it's regurgitated stuff. The man can't think on his feet. The man can't think on his feet. And if you can't think on your feet, you're not going to beat Donald Trump. You're just plain not. Donald Trump can think on his feet. And he demonstrated that at the debate. I think Laura Ingraham put it best. She put out the tweet of all the CNN people all depressed. And that really said a lot. What's really funny, though, is there's this thing at DMN. O'Rourke Castro fumed that Biden has neglected Texas. Well, he didn't neglect Texas because he told them that they demand crunch time investment. Listen, Joe Biden just said he's going to transition away from oil and try and get away from subsidies from oil. Yeah, that's going to play well in Texas. I mean, every year we hear Democrats, Texas is going to turn, Texas is going to turn, Texas is going to turn, Texas is going to turn. And every year it turns out to be ridiculous. But, I mean, you hear this stuff, and it's just amazing. And we already have, speaking of peace deals, we have Trump literally saying we have peace between Israel and Sudan. Sudan! One of a terrorist state that it's been, Sudan, making peace with Israel. Even CNN is calling it a significant foreign policy accomplishment. It'd be nice if he could have announced it before the debate rather than afterwards. But it's just hilarious that Biden's trying to stand up with this. And Biden has nothing. He had nothing. He talks, and again, Trump kid him. You were just here 4 years ago. You had time. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? Now, Biden said, I had a Republican Congress, which he did in the first 2 years, which is how they rammed through Obamacare. But Trump's answer, sometimes you got to talk to him into it. I have to talk him into some of these things. Sometimes, in other words, a leader has to be able to lead. And Biden, think about that. If you're a leader and you're giving excuses as to why you're going to fail, Do you want that person as a leader? The most dangerous thing in the world is an excuse. You give a person an excuse and they can justify anything. They can justify action. They can just justify inaction. An excuse is a dangerous thing. And the Democrats have made excuses for themselves. And please excuse me for a second. I do want to mention something to my son. Sam, there's an awesome steak with peppers, onions, and so forth cooked in butter and olive oil that's in the fridge. If you want to cut yourself some, you will love it. Yes, I made that last night before the debate. And I'll tell you, watching Trump win the debate was good. Watching the Democrats be upset about it was better. But those peppers, onions, and butter and olive oil, that was the best. I mean, you got to enjoy the little things in life besides just politics. But I got to tell you, I mean, Joe Biden, like I said, he would have done better just putting a kick me sign on him. Now, there was an online poll, and I actually believe this online poll, that 95 or 94% of people's vote is not going to be changed by the debate. And that's true. At this point, frankly, there's not a lot of minds being changed. And by now, if you do not have an opinion, it's inconceivable to me that there are people who don't have an opinion on Trump and don't have an opinion on Biden. I mean, there are probably some, because everyone isn't like me. And to me, it's a strange thing. But I think that this election is over. I think that Trump not only won the election weeks ago, I think that Trump may have won the Congress for the Republicans with this last debate. And I find it funny because, like the latest Fox poll shows a surge in Trump. And I don't think there's a surge in Trump. I think what's basically happening is today is the 23rd of October. Election day is 7, 14, 13, 12 days away. And Frank Luntz has said, if the polls are wrong, my profession is finished. So what you're going to see is the polls start to narrow, because now the pollsters, not because people have changed their minds, but because the pollsters realize that if they get it wrong, they're out of business. They need to try and put these numbers within the margin of error. So they're going to try and show a great surge towards Trump. Is it enough? That Politico was reporting Trump came on strong, but is it too late? Pretending that he doesn't already have this race won. The degree of denial here is incredible. I mean, seriously, if I had the ability, the only thing that's going to beat Trump right now is fraud. Only thing that's going to beat Trump is fraud. And I don't think the fraud is going to be enough. It's if you might be able to steal one state. It's hard to steal 4. It's hard to steal 4 or 5. And especially since it's been adequately demonstrated that Trump isn't going to sit back for it. Trump's going to fight. Trump isn't going to pull a Nixon and let Kennedy have Illinois because for the good. He doesn't play that game. That's why Leslie Stahl is calling up Rush Limbaugh saying, will you tell your listeners not to contest, not to go in. That's the left. Basically, the left and the media is in the Noah's Ark stage. And let me explain what I mean by that. For those of you, I'm presuming that everybody here knows the story of Noah and the ark, of, God saying, Noah, build the ark. We're going to go and I'm going to flood the world, build the ark, family inside, animals inside. Now, for the entire time Noah's building the ark, everyone is laughing at Noah. And when the rain starts to come and Noah's closed up the ark, they're still laughing because, it's a little rain. It rains for 2 days. It's a little rain. But every day that the rain keeps falling, the people outside the ark get more and more worried and start moving to higher and higher ground. And when the ark starts to float, because of the flooding, and they're going to higher ground, as the rain continues, that's when people start getting worried. We are in the Noah's Ark stage of this election, where the water's rising, the ark's going to start to float, and the people who are making fun of him are starting to sweat. The left is starting to sweat because the actual payoff time is coming. And they're sweating big. You can see how they're sweating. And it's just, it's a pleasure to see. But again, Biden's put a kick me sign on him. Now, will we see much of Joe Biden for the next 2 weeks? I doubt it. The only disadvantage to Trump is the idea that plenty of people probably have already voted, so he doesn't get the full effect of a win like this. But at this point, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. I think the Biden campaign is toast. I think the Democrats know the Biden campaign is toast. And you might remember a while back, I theorized that the Democrats figured they didn't have a prayer, which is one of the reasons why they went for Biden. They didn't want to waste a good candidate on him. But, hope springs eternal for people. You never know. So that's what's going on. But I got to laugh at the climate change stuff. And I want to pivot to that because I want to remind people of something. And I want to remind them of Rush Limbaugh. Now, back in 2016, and I'm going to put this down because I'm going to tweet out that it just occurred to me, I did not put on Gab that we're doing this. That is very foolish of me. I can't believe I forgot to put this out on Gab. I'm just putting it out on Twitter. That is way foolish of me. So we're going to put this out on Gab. Let me switch over to my Gab account. Okay, the Tech Guy off the radio podcast live stream on now. Talking Rush and change via Viz the debate. Okay, let's fit that out. I can't believe I forgot to do that. Well, anyways, you'll remember that Al Gore came out with his documentary back in 2006. And he was very famous about, we have 10 years left to save the planet. And Rush Limbaugh, being Rush Limbaugh, decided he was going to have fun with this. And he decided he was going to put the Al Gore Armageddon clock. He was going to do the Al Gore Armageddon clock and put it out there and say, all right, we're going to do a countdown. We are going to do a countdown from the time that he said that Al Gore says that we have no chance to save the world. And every day, if you went to Rush's site, the clock was ticking. A day, minutes and seconds would pass, but eventually it would be days and weeks and months and years passed. And then in 2016, and we're going to tweet this out as well, talking real Rush Limbaugh's the clock and Al Gore in the context of the debate and Joe Biden saying we have 10 years left. So the clock ticked and ticked. Listen live here. Oh, the clock's ticking. And eventually the clock runs out. And we were all still here. So Gore says we have 10 years to live. Rush does a countdown clock. 10 years later, we're all still here. Now, I want to point out something. That clock ran out in January of 2016. January of 2016. And I want to read you the post I wrote at the time. I actually have it pinned at the top of the my blog at DatechGuyblog.com. I want to read you this. 10 years ago, Al Gore gave a speech saying we have only 10 years to save the planet from global warming. At the time, Rush Limbaugh started a countdown clock at 10 years. This is January 27th, 2006. We will begin the count, ladies and gentlemen. This is just, you have to love these people from afar and from a purely observational point of view. And it ran out, and the thing was, time's up, and we're still here. Unexpectedly, not only are we all waking up alive, but if you're waking up in either New York or Washington, odds are you are still seeing the snow on the ground from this week's record-setting blizzard, and global warming is an issue that ranks below, well, everything. But that's okay, because Al Gore has already made his millions off of it, and there are still a few suckers out there to be taken who will be. But the best thing to do today is to look at the few fools who fall for this hoax and laugh. Closing thought, taking Al Gore at his word, if it's now too late to do anything about global warming, shouldn't we immediately stop spending money on it? Well, so Biden says that we have 10 years left. 4 years after Al Gore says that Al Gore's clock has run out. And it occurred to me when I was thinking about this. I'm unpinning this, by the way, so if you haven't seen it, you've got about 30 seconds to see it before it goes back to January 27th of 2016 on my blog. It occurred to me, my son just turned 27 this week, my youngest son, not the one who just showed up. And he was told in school, I asked him today, when were you first told about global warming at school and such? And then, there was a little time to run out to save the planet. And he said 7th grade. He was 12 years old in 7th grade. Actually, Sam, do you remember being told about global warming and that we only have so much time to save the planet when you were in school? No. Yeah, Sam went. There's a reason why I sent the other kid to the Catholic school, to a more sane school. But anyway, so my son was warned this, and the other son was warned this at age 12, and he's 27 now. Now it occurs to me that this has been going on since the 80s and early 90s. People have been screaming this. So we are now literally the children who were scared to death by global warming and scared to death that we're going to destroy the world have now grown up. And some of them are married, and some of them have children. And some of their children are now in school. So consider this. If somebody told you when you were a kid, you're all going to die from this in the next 10 years, and you've grown up and you have kids of your own, and they come home saying, Mom, Dad, teacher told us we're all going to die from global warming if we don't do something in 10 years. Don't you think it might occur to you that this might not be true? Doesn't it occur to people that if we have a second generation of people being told that they only have so many years to live, that it might all be a grift? I mean, this is the Millerites on steroids. And for those of you who don't know, the Millerites were a religious sect who predicted the end of the world. And then it didn't happen. They said, we had the date wrong. We're predicting a later end of the world. And then that didn't happen. Then it was finally, the end of the world's coming, but we just don't have the date right, type of thing. They eventually became the Seventh-day Adventists, by the way. But think about this. You now have a second generation of people being told that global warming is going to kill them if we don't do something in 10 years. If your parents have been told the same thing and you're still alive, then you shouldn't be afraid of this. And if you're a parent and your kid has been told this and you were told this when you were in school, you know to tell them, don't worry. And that's another thing that Donald Trump did. Donald Trump pointed out that the United States is already below has already met, we're not a part of the Paris Accord, but we've already met our carbon footprint, which doesn't really matter, frankly, is already back to where it was years ago, because the U.S. has already done stuff. And he pointed out, Russia and China and all these countries didn't have to do things because that's the way the treaty was, because that's not what it was about. It was about retarding the U.S. for the benefit of our enemies, because it's a whole lot cheaper to pay activists than it is to buy bombs, as I've said before. It's a whole lot cheaper to buy activists than it is to put spies and make big payoffs to government people. You buy the professors, you buy the activists, you have this. And no one seems to want to ask this question in a school. And I think it'd be a great question to ask a teacher is, if our children, if we were told that the world was going to end when we were children because of this climate change, and we have children and you're teaching the same thing, doesn't it suggest there's something wrong here? And apparently nobody sees the contradiction. I don't see how people miss this contradiction. I don't, and again, maybe it's just the way I look at things compared to other people, but it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous that this is still the case and that people are falling for it. It's like the old Doctor Who line, lost my maps. Are people still falling for that old grift? And there are people who are still falling for it. And it's a shame. And that's part of it is because human nature doesn't change. And part of it is because the Democrats don't change. Because remember, look at what Joe Biden was selling yesterday. Doom and gloom, apocalypse, doom and gloom, apocalypse. That's the Democrat bread and butter. And if that's the Democrat bread and butter, global warming fits right into it. So you have these people panic, but they're not panic. Their panic over Donald Trump is because they won't have access to the trillions of dollars that they can steer to their friends, to their families. What do you think these political things are for? This is the purpose of being a government official to Joe Biden, is to be able to enrich yourself, enrich your family, especially the idiots in your family. Think of the movie, if you really want to understand this, think of the movie Casino. Remember in the movie Casino, Robert De Niro's trying to run the casino. And there's this guy who's supposed to be watching the slots, and two people win within a jackpot within a certain amount of time. He says, no, that doesn't happen. It's happening because you missed it. And the commission guy meets with him. And the commission guy, what's funny is the commission guy is basically Harry Reid, is who it's based on. And the guy agrees that, yeah, he's stupid, but he's the brother-in-law, and we'd appreciate it if you keep him. And De Niro just can't bear. Now, instinctively, you want to keep this guy on your side because he can make trouble for you. But De Niro, boy, someone's dog is really loud outside. But De Niro can't bring himself to keep him because the guy's too big of an idiot. But that's what happens. These people grease members of their family this way. And as long as Trump is in there, a non-politician who is not dependent on the government for his wealth, is not dependent on any of your tax dollars to help out his own family. He's got his own businesses that his family runs into. It just doesn't work. And that's what stuff like the Green New Deal and all this stuff is about. It's about greasing Democrats. It's about greasing donors. That's what it's about. But again, the fact that people have been predicting this, how many times can you fall for this? How many times can you predict the end of the world and it not happening, and then you predict it again? Apparently as many times as you can, because people forget. The next generation doesn't remember. They don't think that the previous generation has been told this. And I gotta laugh. I gotta laugh at these people. I gotta laugh at them. But speaking of laughter, let's go to topic number 3. And Facebook and Twitter and Leslie Stahl. I want to start with Facebook. We talked last week about the censorship at Facebook and Twitter of the story concerning the president. And Facebook took that censorship to a new level. When the Babylon Bee decided to put out a piece that, for a Monty Python fan, I'm a big Monty Python fan. I've loved Monty Python all my life. I think they're one of the greatest comedy teams, if not the greatest comedy team that ever lived. I think their humor, which was cutting edge at this time, a lot of it still stands up. And what's really funny about them is that they were equal opportunity offenders. They didn't care who they offended. offense was what Monty Python did. And one of the things, they had a scene in their famous movie, their first big hit, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where a woman is accused of being a witch. And that basically, why is she a witch? She looks like one. And of course, she's dressed up as a witch. They dressed me up like this. Well, we did do the nose and the hat, but she's a witch. And they're trying to say, there are ways of telling if she's a witch. How do they tell us? And the guy puts through a sense of logic. What do you burn besides witches? More witches. No, wood. So why do witches burn? Because they're made of wood. Good. So how do we know that she's made of wood? Build a bridge out of her. But can you also make bridges out of stone? Does wood sink in water? No, it floats. Throw her into the pond. Oh, what also floats in water? And they go through things, and suddenly King Arthur shows up. A duck floats, and everyone's, ooh. So logically, if she weighs the same as a duck, she's made of wood, and therefore a witch. So they bring it to a scale to see if she weighs the same as a duck. And of course, this being Monty Python, it turns out that she does in fact weigh the same as a duck. And as they're taking her off to be burnt, she's over there, it's a fair cop, which is British for, yeah, you caught me. So the Babylon Bee, and I gave you all of that background because in case you didn't know the joke, but also because I love to talk Monty Python. So the Babylon Bee puts out an article saying that Mazie Hirono, the senator from Hawaii, the idiot from Hawaii, I should say, decides that they are going to have Amy Coney Barrett weighed to see if she's weighs the same as a duck, to see if she's a witch. And it's a Monty Python joke. So it's a direct reference from the movie. It's a Monty Python joke. And Facebook decides that this is an incitement to violence. And then they do a review of it. And they say, we did a manual review, and yes, we're upholding this thing. This is an incitement to violence, and we're going to demonetize the page. We're going to ban it, etc. And again, the piece itself. Let me read you the piece proper that they say is an incitement to violence. Senator Hirono demands ACB be weighed against the duck to see if she's a witch. After 2 days of the Amy Coney Barrett gracefully and stoically answering questions with perfect recall and no notes, suspicions grew on Capitol Hill that she might be a practitioner of the dark arts. Quote, "Oh, she's a witch, all right. Just look at her," said Senator Hirono. "Just look at the way she's dressed and how she's so much prettier and smarter than us. She's in league with Beelzebub himself. I just know it. We must burn her." Now, in fairness, this article in itself is inaccurate because if she was a witch and a follower of Beelzebub, Democrats would all be behind her. Senator Hirono then pulled a live duck out of a massive burlap sack next to her and announced, "In addition to being a senator, I am also quite wise in the ways of science. Everyone knows witches burns because they are made of wood, and I think I read that somewhere. Wood floats and so do ducks. So logically, if Amy Coney Barrett weighs as much as this duck I found in the reflection pool outside, she's a witch and must be burnt." The Democrat senators nodded in solemn agreement while the Republicans yelled and pounded on their desks a bunch before pouncing and booking interviews with Tucker Carlson. Congressional aides also brought in a bathroom scale from Jerry Nadler's office in order to weigh ACB against the duck. Fortunately, disaster was averted when Mitch McConnell entered the room and put a stop to the proceedings. Now, think about this for a second. This was considered an incitement to violence. And Facebook's argument, Facebook is penalizing us for restricting monetization with ominous warnings. So at first they didn't tell them what they were doing. So here's what they say. So after a manual review, Facebook says they stand by their decision to pull down the article and demonetize our page. I'm not kidding. They say this article incites violence. It's literally a regurgitated joke from a Monty Python movie. Well, what happens next, as you might have guessed, is this gets out to the general public. And Facebook decides that they look like idiots. And they decide to change their mind on this. And here's the update. Now remember, they claimed that they did a manual review. Oh, now that the story has attracted some media attention, Facebook has reversed their decision and lifted the restrictions on our page. They now say it was just a mistake. And they blame it on their automated systems, even though a person manually reviewed it after our appeal. Now, I think the problem with that, with Mr. Dillon of the Babylon Bee, is he does not understand that when they said manually, that's actually probably the name of the person who runs the automated system. His name is Manuel. His last name is Lee. So Facebook didn't mean to say that they actually had a person look at the thing in person and say, "Oh yes, this is incitement. They're going to burn people's witches." They just meant, "Oh no, it was automated. This guy Manny Lee, he runs our automated system. And he had the switch on automatic." I mean, the word manual actually means something, but not to Facebook. Not to Facebook. And again, since we're redefining words or just looking at the other meaning, I thought of this with Leslie Stahl. Because as you've probably heard, President Trump had an interview with 60 Minutes, as did Vice President Biden. And the president, knowing 60 Minutes and remembering what happened with them, said, "Well, no, we're going to tape this as well." And they put it out there. They put it out in their entirety. And 60 Minutes is completely upset. They're horrified. How dare you put this out there first? Now, this is something I've talked about for a very long time. And I've said this to people. If you've ever seen me at CPAC, I've had people come up to me and ask me for advice about interviews. And my advice is always the same. Do not consent to an interview with someone you do not know unless they allow you to tape the interview. If they will not allow you to record the interview or record them interviewing you, you don't do the interview. Because you presume that the other side is playing games. It's like when I was at CPAC a few years ago, and the Samantha Bee show asked me to bring up solitaire on my screen while Donald Trump was speaking so they could have a picture of somebody playing solitaire during his speech, like they're really nobody's paying attention. I said, well, first of all, I didn't know where the solitaire app was. It was a brand new computer. But second of all, that's dishonest. But that's the games they play. And Leslie Stahl, during the interview, and one of the great things about the interview was Leslie Stahl talking about how, Donald Trump brings up the Joe Biden laptop, which has been censored by Facebook and so forth. And Leslie, we can't verify this. What do you mean it can't be verified? Well, it can't be verified. Now, mind you, you already had people who had verified this. But they're over the, she's over the, this can't be verified. But when they say it can't be verified, Leslie Stahl just meant something different. She didn't mean can't in the sense that we are not able to verify. She meant can't in we are not allowed to verify this. Because remember what I said about the media and about Jake Tapper. And remember what happened to on the Tonight Show when Donald Trump went on and the host of the Tonight Show decided, just did a regular interview with him. They went nuts because they blame, again, the left needs a scapegoat. The left is going to need a scapegoat when this election is over. And Leslie Stahl, it's just, we can't. Can't depends on what the meaning of the word can't is. It's like, it's Bill Clinton's, depends on the meaning of the word is. By can't, they mean they cannot because they are not allowed. Not because they cannot do it, but they are not allowed to. Can't has both of those meanings. And it's just amazing, amazing, amazing. And David Hassani put this even better. once the Biden partner, who President Trump brought out to the debate so that he could be there while it went on. The New York Post story now has one more on the record source than the Atlantic did when everyone went with their Trump haters in soldiers piece, the one that's still constantly being repeated as fact. Again, these guys, they're not trying to hide it anymore, and they're all trying to outdo each other to prove that they are loyal. They're trying to, they're trying to prove their loyalty. That's what it's come down to. They're trying to prove their loyalty so that when the election falls, when Donald Trump beats them, no one will be able to point to them and said, it's because you did this. It's because you said that. It's because you reported this. That's what they're most afraid of. And this makes a lot of sense, because when you're dealing with communists, when you're dealing with people who do not feel free to say what they think, people like that are run by fear. And that fear is what drives them. That fear is what drove Major League Baseball to embrace Black Lives Matter, and now they're not drawing any viewers. It's this fear of not being the right person just kills them. I mean, it's terrible. And I mean, but the media is phony. It's like this tweet from Mary Margaret Olahan on CNN. CNN analyst gives Daily Caller a shout out, quote, "You need an encyclopedia of what's going on because it's a series of buzzwords that have meaning. Perhaps if you've been studying the Daily Caller, whatever it is." Now, that was said by Kathleen Collins. And Kathleen Collins, CNN's White House correspondent, worked at the Daily Caller before going to CNN. So we really, you got a person pretending she knows, pretending things, because they do not want to see as wrong. They do not want to look like they're on the wrong side, because the money might stop coming. The jobs might stop coming. Because they're employed by an industry that is owned by the left. And that's what we really have to think. When you look at the people who are saying the things that they're saying, never forget, whether it's the Lincoln Project, whether it's Bill Kristol at the Bulwark, whether it's some of the real insane people on MSNBC who say things that they don't even believe. When your income is dependent on believing a certain thing, you will not believe how easy it is to be convinced of that. And that's what we have from the left. And again, that's why they're busy redefining words, redefining debunked, redefining this, because it's not a question of information. It's a question of information ops. It's a question of showing that they are loyal. And that's where they are. And it's a really sad thing to be at that point. Again, it's not something I can understand. It's not something I comprehend. But that's where they are. And that's where they're going to remain. Now, I want to remind you, if you came late, that unless you're watching this at a later time, if you're watching this live, I am going to be on Lee Stranahan's show at 5:15 today, talking to the debate. I'm going to say a lot of the things I said now, and I'll throw in a few other things for good measure. But if you want to check me out, head over to Lee Stranahan's site. It's a link to the page where we're going to be. We would be absolutely delighted. The show is called The Backstory. The same link where the podcast is located is where you can find it. So just give a click and you'll be able to catch me. I'm going to be on from 5:15 to 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. That's about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes from now. So a little more house cleaning. Remember, DatechGuyblog.com, DatechGuyblog.com, DatechGuyblog channel on YouTube. If you like this video, please share it. we'll get some thumbs up, hopefully, and so forth. Reminder that tomorrow, if you're in the Fitchburg, Leominster area, that tomorrow is going to be a special mass for the country at noontime. I didn't get to the Pope today, but I'm just going to say two things concerning that briefly, since we're almost out of time. That Catholic doctrine does not change in a documentary interview. And second of all, that the church has been spoiled by a lot of saintly popes in 2000. So in 2000 years, we're bound to get a lemon. But I remember the days when being called more Catholic at the Pope was just the Pope was just considered a joke. It's a sad, sad thing for that. But anyways, this is Pete the Tech Guy, DatechGuyblog.com, saying thank you very much for joining us for this podcast. We will be back next week, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with more Tech Guy off the radio. Till then, thanks for spending some time with us. Goodbye, and God bless you all, which is the closing I use for my radio show. By the way, remember, my regular terrestrial radio show is on every Saturday at noon on WQPH 89.3 FM, Shirley, Fitchburg. You can catch the live stream at the WQPH website at wqphradio.org. Take care, and we will see you in a week.